witnesses in this case. And again, we're expecting more to take the stand today on the side of the state. The state right now is giving their case, and joining us is Kailey Tracy, a reporter who has been covering this story from the very start. She's with First Coast News. And now, Kailey, you have been there now for going on 5 weeks. So I want to just first of all get the overall tone of what is happening at this point there in Brunswick. We know we're expecting quite a few people out there today in terms of a crowd when it comes to demonstrators due to a comment that was made just last week.
Right. So Kevin Goff is the attorney for William Roddy Bryan, the man who took the video of the shooting. He made a comment last week in court, last Thursday, saying we don't need any more black pastors in court, and said, what if people dressed up as Colonel Sanders and wore white masks and came into this courtroom? He was talking specifically about the Reverend Al Sharpton, who came to support and sat with the Arbery family the day before Wednesday. He did admit that he didn't even notice that he was in the courtroom until he actually got home that night. He found out. So the judge had said that he wasn't going to make a blanket ruling on who was attending court unless there were disruptions or distractions. And he said, frankly, he himself, the judge, didn't even realize also that Al Sharpton was in the courtroom. Maybe once or twice he saw him, but he was not a distraction or a disruption.
Now, Kailey,
so the
right
Reverend
now,
Al
folks,
Sharpton
Kaylee's on her way into court. You see her driving right now. She's not driving. She's actually in the passenger seat. Richard McKinney there, our photographer here at First Coast News, he's in the driver's side right now. So just to clarify some things for you as you watch this online coverage of this trial. So, Kailey, we're going to get back to what this comment made by the attorney for William Bryan. His name is Kevin Goff. Now, after he made this comment, we do know that he apologized on Friday, but at that point, a move had already been made by a well-known civil rights attorney. So fill us in on that.
Sure. So the Reverend Al Sharpton and some of the family's civil attorneys said that they were going to bring 100 black pastors. Originally, it was going to be today. They have since moved it to Thursday, and now they're calling on religious leaders from across the country to come to Brunswick to support the family in response to Kevin Goff's statements. The apology that you mentioned Friday, a lot of people did not find it genuine, specifically because of what Kevin Goff said. He said he had been asked to address comments he made, the judge saying the court didn't ask him to do this, but he went ahead and said, essentially, if I inadvertently offended you with my comments, then basically he was sorry. And the word inadvertently offended, that phrase kind of struck some people as not genuine. Specifically, Ahmaud Arbery's mother said she did not find it genuine.
I also heard from one of his aunts in an interview with Renata Di Gregorio, who's another First Coast News reporter, and I did hear the aunt say that she as well did not find this to be sincere, specifically because there's a motion that he plans to file regarding all of this today.
That's right. Yeah, he also said in that apology that he essentially said if his language wasn't specific enough in court that day with his comments, he's planning to file a motion regarding black pastors in the courtroom and essentially who he calls potentially distractions. And he's worried that outside influences could intimidate and or influence potential or these jurors in the courtroom at this point.
Kailey, let's go ahead and look ahead at this point. Like we said, we're at week 5 right now. We've already heard from several witnesses from the state that they've called to the stand, and we're expecting actually to hear from the defense sometime this week. What are you hearing in terms of a timeline?
One of the defense attorneys, actually Travis McMichael's attorney, told me last week as far as the timeline, he thought at that point, that was later in the week last week, that the defense would start calling its witnesses potentially as early as tomorrow. Right now, I think that may get pushed back a little bit. We may hear them by Thursday, maybe Friday. The state is still calling its witnesses, as you've said. I think today we will hear more testimony from several GBI agents. We know that one of the GBI agents who started his testimony Friday will finish up today. But they still have a few agents to call and some other people as well.
Let's look back a little bit to some of the bigger points from last week, some of the key points, things that we heard as witnesses got on the stand. We did hear several witnesses testify that they did not hear either of the McMichaels or Bryan say that they were attempting a citizen's arrest, attempting to make a citizen's arrest on the scene, which is so imperative in this because we know that is one of their key defenses. One, that they were making a citizen's arrest, they claim, and then two, that this was in self-defense, that Arbery was shot and killed. So let's talk about that and the importance that you're hearing in terms of when this was said that they did not plan to make it a citizen's arrest. So let's clarify some things with that.
Sorry, I may be breaking up a little bit. I think you maybe can still hear me. But as you were saying, some of the officers who took the stand, who interviewed the defendants after the shooting, the prosecutors specifically asked them, did they use the words citizen's arrest, detain, basically those exact words, and said that that was what they were trying to do. And those officers testified, said, no, they did not. The defense came back and essentially argued, well, they said specifically Greg Michael, that he was holding Ahmaud Arbery until police got there. We know that he and his son called 911 shortly before shots were fired. Another key argument is that the officer who had responded to calls people trespassing on that property of the home under construction in the months beforehand and days beforehand, he was also questioned whether or not he intended to deputize essentially Greg McMichael. Greg McMichael had offered to give his cell phone number, being former law enforcement, to that homeowner of the home under construction, to which that officer gave that homeowner his number. This officer said, no, that was never my intention to deputize. It was interesting, the defense came back and said, well, you know, a few nights before the shooting, when Ahmaud Arbery was seen at that house again, Travis had called 911. This officer responded, and essentially the defense said, well, you never told them to go home. You knew they were armed, right? You never told them to let the cops take care of it. And this officer said, well, no, I didn't. So there were strong arguments.
These are very important points you're bringing up right now. So the officer we're talking about, just to clarify, is Robert Rash, who was on the stand just last week. And as you mentioned, Kailey, he did send a text message to the homeowner of the home that was under construction that we saw Ahmaud Arbery in the video and several times in that surveillance video, sent a text message letting that homeowner know that Gregory McMichael was willing to help him to look out for the home. And then when asked, as you mentioned, he said that he did not deputize Gregory or Travis, but still we saw what happened in the end. They said that they were attempting to make a citizen's arrest, and it ended in Ahmaud Arbery's death. Now, if you can go over what the defense said, because that is important to mention as well, about what was said by Robert Rash.
Sure. So just to clarify, breaking down the details, just 12 days before Ahmaud Arbery was killed, he was seen on that surveillance video at that home under construction. Travis McMichael ended up calling 911 that night, and this officer responds again. And that night, basically, there's a bunch of neighbors out there, including Greg and Travis McMichael, and they are essentially helping this officer search for Ahmaud Arbery. They end up never finding him that night, but that's when the defense is arguing on Friday, saying basically, well, you didn't mind them helping you out, did you? And he says, no. And then, you know, you didn't tell them to go home, did you? He said, no. And you knew that Travis was armed, didn't you? He said, yes. So that was a pretty strong line of questioning from the defense, showing that, you know, the prosecutors may have said that the exact words citizen's arrest weren't used, but this is essentially what had happened in the days and months leading up to Ahmaud Arbery's killing.
And we do want to mention, when we say that they were looking for Arbery, it doesn't mean that he took anything, because several witnesses, including Rash, got on the stand. Even though at Michael's, they did not see him take anything from the property at any point.
Yeah, so that's a good point,
right.
Meg, that even the officers and the homeowner, Larry English is his name, they all said they're pretty sure that Ahmaud Arbery never stole anything from that home.
He was seen on the property on several occasions, seen on
right.
surveillance video doing so. Folks, if you're just now joining us, you are watching First Coast News' online coverage of a major trial out in Brunswick, Georgia, that has caught national attention. This is involving the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. Right now, you have 3 men who are facing murder charges at this time. We're talking about Gregory and Travis McMichael, father and son, as well as William Bryan, who was a neighbor who went along on this chase that ultimately ended in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. And joining us right now over the phone via Zoom is Kailey Tracy, First Coast News reporter, who has been on this case since the very beginning, back in May of 2020, and she's been at that trial going on now for 5 weeks. Kailey is, you see her in a vehicle there. She's on her way to court. She is actually going to be one of the reporters inside, not the courtroom, but in an extra area for reporters, the overflow room, where she's taking very detailed notes. And you're going to want to follow her, by the way, if you're following this trial closely. Follow her on Twitter at Kailey Tracy, because she is, again, giving very detailed notes about what is going on there in the courtroom. Kailey, I'd like to look ahead quickly if we can. I know I only have you for about 10 more minutes or so. What can we expect today?
Today, we'll hear the rest of the questioning from prosecutors regarding one of their witnesses who started Friday, one of the GBI agents who questioned specifically William Roddy Bryant, afterwards searched the phone of his. They picked up the case in May. I believe after that, we'll hear from a few more GBI agents as well.
Okay. Kailey, you had a really emotional interview. I call those some of the toughest interviews that we have to give as reporters, when you talk to someone who has lost a loved one. Yes, it's been almost a year now since Wanda Cooper Jones lost her son, but still, when you bring up these topics, it opens old wounds. If you can, give us some insight into that interview, by the way, which is on our website at firstcoastnews.com.
Sure. So Thursday, I had the opportunity Thursday evening to interview Wanda Cooper Jones. That was the day that Attorney Kevin Goff had made the statements about not wanting any more Black pastors in the courtroom, and she was kind of shell-shocked at that comment in general. Her reaction to that, saying that, you know, this is a family grieving. Basically, how could you say who and who cannot sit with the family, who can comfort them, that sort of thing. Something really interesting I found when I asked her what she thought, again, about the mostly white jury. We know that there are 11 white jurors and 1 Black juror. You know, she initially was pretty upset about it, as were a lot of people out here. She said she was kind of shocked at that as well. But now she's seeing that, she says, essentially, you know, she thinks that these jurors, no matter what color of their skin, that they will do the right thing. They will get justice for her son, and she's pretty confident in that. She also, something else interesting, she said she wants Gregory McMichael, the father, to take the stand. She says she doesn't need to hear from the other 2, Travis and William Roddy Bryant. She wants to hear specifically from Gregory McMichael as a parent, saying she wants to get inside his head that day and think, you know, he has made the defense that he was trying to help his son, and you've seen him in body camera video comforting, consoling his son after the shooting. She says she honestly wants to talk with him parent to parent and say, you know, I never got to have that opportunity to protect my son that day, and just talk to him parent to parent to break it down. And she says she could never imagine doing something like that as a parent.
Wow. When the dust settles, maybe she'll have the opportunity to have that one-on-one with Gregory McMichael. That is really tough, and it's even hard to hear that and picture that. Again, a tough interview. Well, Kailey, for those who are just now joining us, I do want to go over attorney Kevin Goff's statement. Now, Kevin Goff is William Bryant's attorney. William Bryant is the neighbor in this case who actually took the cell phone video of this deadly shooting of Ahmaud Arbery back in February of 2020. Now, Kevin Goff's statement, Goff caused a firestorm, not just there in Brunswick, not in Glenn County, not in Georgia, but all across the nation. I have friends who are contacting me from New York, California, all over the place, saying, what is going on there, you know, in Brunswick? Did this really happen? Yes, it did. I saw your tweet, Kailey, immediately when it did, and I had to read it. Wait a minute, did I see this correctly? I went back through
Right.
the pool feed to listen to what reporters had to say as well, and he really did say that. And we've heard from so many people say that it was distasteful, the wording. And in the end, we're seeing reaction to this. Something's set to happen. You mentioned it's going to happen later on this week. Now it's Thursday. We're going to see all these pastors converge there in Brunswick. Clarify for us what's going on.
Yeah, sure. So just for background, Kevin Goff made a statement in court Thursday following Reverend Al, excuse me, Reverend Al Sharpton was in court Wednesday with the family. And Kevin Goff said, we don't want any more Black pastors in here. We don't need any more Black pastors in here. And essentially said, what if everyone dressed up as Colonel Sanders and wore white masks? The judge kind of shut that down pretty much immediately. And you saw kind of a firestorm on social media. And the Reverend Al Sharpton, as did some attorneys and other religious leaders, said, okay, well, we're going to bring 100 Black pastors to Brunswick, Georgia. They're planning to do that Thursday, and they're calling on all religious leaders really from around the country to come join them and pray and support the Arbery family here in Brunswick. I do want to mention, you talked about reactions immediately in real time when Kevin Goff made those statements. There are, you know, other legal teams around him for the other defendants, and we saw this one facial expression from it was Gregory McMichael was one of his attorneys, and right away her face was, I think, how a lot of people were feeling. She could not
Believe that
contain
she heard that.
she couldn't contain it, and she couldn't believe the statements. And following that Friday, we did hear from Travis McMichael's attorney. He hasn't talked to us too much during the actual trial. We heard from him during jury selection more, but he came out at lunchtime Friday and said, I want to talk to you guys. You heard the statements made in court by Mr. Kevin Goff. I just want to let you know that he called them asinine and basically said that there are 3 defendants. They each have their own legal team, and we don't speak for each other. So he was distancing himself. And he went on just to make some other comments about Kevin Goff's comment. I talked to the other legal team for Gregory McMichael. They told me essentially to look up, her name's Laura Hogue, the woman's reaction who I was just talking about. Look up her reaction on YouTube, and they said that speaks for itself.
Yeah, there was another attorney sitting next to Goff. It looks like on his side, and she almost put her hand up, kind of like, oh my gosh, and put it down. I guess she caught a reaction. But as you mentioned, a lot of people reacting the way many of us did, kind of in disbelief. As I said, I saw your tweet. I had to go back through the notes. Like, I know you're normally accurate, Kailey, always are, but I was just like, there's no way that was said, but it was distasteful, as most are saying. He did apologize. We do want to make that clear. Whether it's being accepted or not by folks, he did apologize. And in the end, his response to the black pastors comment, now we're seeing at least 100 black pastors set to converge there in Brunswick, Georgia, likely Thursday now of this week, what we're hearing. We shall wait to see. Quickly, while I have you just a few more minutes, Kailey, let's look ahead. So for folks who are just now joining the First Coast News online coverage of the trial in Brunswick, Georgia, where we know 3 men right now are facing murder charges in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. So let's look ahead briefly to what we can expect today.
Sure. So the state is still calling its witnesses. We heard from a GBI agent, the first GBI agent, Friday, finishing up his testimony today. He interviewed William Roddy Bryan following the shooting. I should say a few months later, when they picked up the case in May. This happened obviously in February of 2020. We expect to hear from some more GBI agents today and in the next few days, and potentially the state will rest its case either, I think maybe tomorrow at the very earliest, or potentially Wednesday, maybe Thursday at the latest.
Tuesday, Wednesday is the same. I've been hearing as well. Kailey, I'm going to let you go right now, folks. If you don't know, Kailey Tracy is a First Coast News On Your Side reporter who has been on this case since the very beginning, since May of 2020, and she's been there in Brunswick since almost going on 5 weeks now, every day that this trial has been underway. So she's actually heading into the courthouse now, so you can click off if you need to. Kailey, I want to thank you again for joining us. Folks, you're watching First Coast News' online coverage of the murder trial of 3 men right now accused of murder in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. We are talking about Gregory and Travis McMichael, father and son, as well as their neighbor, William Roddy Bryan. Now, Bryan actually was the man who captured the cell phone video of Ahmaud Arbery's killing. Once that video was released, it sparked a firestorm all across not just Glynn County, not just Georgia, but the nation. People wondering what was going on in that small town. We know that pretty much snowballed into arrests. We saw several arrests made in May connected to this case that we are now seeing on trial again. We're now in November of 2021. We are seeing testimony continue. We know in just a few minutes, in about 10 minutes or so, at 9 o'clock, testimony is set to resume in the courthouse there at Glynn County. We just got some insight from First Coast News reporter Kailey Tracy, who's been following this case for over a year now. As she mentioned, we're expecting to hear more testimony this morning from the state, and they are expected to wrap either Tuesday or Wednesday. So we do know it should happen sometime this week. As for a timeline as to when this trial overall will wrap up, we're talking about closing statements, deliberations, everything. They're expecting this to wrap hopefully by Thanksgiving. So we shall wait to see what happens with that. Again, this is a case that has caught a lot of people's eyes. I'm receiving a text right now from another one of our reporters Gau's counsel. Okay. Another one of our reporters who is down there right now just to get the latest on things. She's entering the courtroom as well, really in the overflow room. So to give you an idea of what happens there at the Glynn County Courthouse, I've been back and forth there since the trial began, as we mentioned, almost 5 weeks now. And so there's only a certain amount of people that are actually allowed inside of the courtroom itself, mainly family of both the defense, the accused, as well as Ahmaud Arbery's family. That's where you'll see mainly inside of the courtroom. Now, there is a reporter or two reporters actually allowed inside as well to record what's going on, and that's fed out to pretty much everyone else that you're seeing covering this. And then there is an overflow room within the Glynn County Courthouse. Overflow room is where most reporters are able to sit in. You have to get there at a certain time, by the way, which is why Kailey had to hop off of this call with us. So there's a certain amount of reporters that are actually allowed in that overflow room. They're able to sit inside of the courthouse, not the courtroom, and record what's going on. So again, in just about 10 minutes or so, we're expecting to see things get underway. Just to give you a little bit of a timeline, what we're expecting, again, we're expecting the state to either close Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. Obviously, it's fluid. You don't know exactly when that will happen, especially in this case in particular. We've seen so many interruptions within the courtroom from different attorneys. We're seeing a lot of back and forth between the defense, the state, as well as the judge. So we're waiting to see exactly what will happen with that. But again, you can always count on First Coast News for in-depth reporting. So right now on our website, firstcoastnews.com, you can also access it through the First Coast News app. There is a section dedicated to this trial. The Death of Ahmaud Arbery trial coverage is what you'll see it called, again, on our website. There you can actually go in and find out so many specific details, what we can share about the actual jury, because that's something a lot of folks are still talking about, the makeup of this jury. You have 11 white jurors and one black juror. It's a black male. So there are a lot of things that we can't share about the jurors, but when it comes to the questioning that led to them actually making their way to be seated, you can go through our website again, firstcoastnews.com, and you can find out some of those questioning that led to the actual seating of this jury pool. And a lot of interviews as well, in-depth interviews with certain players when it comes to this trial, and some folks who have been through similar situations. Just a few weeks ago, I interviewed Ron Davis. Ron Davis, we know, was the father of Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis was shot and killed at a Southside gas station here in Jacksonville back in 2012. In that case, it took 2 trials to finally have Jordan Davis's killer. Finally, right now, he is in prison and he is facing life in prison, but it took 2 trials for that to happen. So Ron Davis opens up in that interview about what it was like sitting through those 2 trials back in 2014, waiting for the man who murdered his son to be convicted, which happened ultimately. But obviously his prayers and thoughts right now are with the Arbery family. He says he's hoping they'll get justice. What justice looks like to different people, it's different, because when you speak with faith leaders there in Glynn County as well, they'll tell you in the end, not everyone's going to be happy. When a verdict finally comes down, someone's going to be unhappy, but they are there to hold everyone's hand as everyone as possible and pray with them. And again, the whole vibe of things there, I could tell you since the very beginning, is peace. That's what everyone is hoping for there in Glynn County. There was concern that there would be outside demonstrators coming in and causing disharmony in that area, but it has been peaceful overall, the demonstrations that we've seen. This week, we will likely see larger crowds. Things pick up as we get closer and closer to an end to all of this. But as you see there, we have Kailey Tracy on the ground, Renazio Gregorio, several photographers as well, and Schindler. A lot of people from First Coast News are there on the grounds right now, bringing you detailed information as soon as it comes in. Again, in just about 5 minutes or so, we're going to turn things over to the court, which is set to resume. You're going to go inside of the courtroom there in Glynn County as this murder trial continues. Again, this is the murder trial of 3 men right now accused of murder in the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery. We're talking about Gregory and Travis McMichael, as well as William Bryan. And this all stems around the shooting death of Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot and killed back in February of 2020. Right now, we're in November of 2021, and things are underway. We're actually going into week 5. So right now, we are going to go ahead and turn things over as court gets ready to resume again in this murder trial. And you can always go to our website, firstcoastnews.com. Check out that First Coast News app. Follow Kailey Tracy on Twitter, as well as at Shindy. Now, these are all people who are following this in detail. And if you want detailed information about exactly what's going on in real time as it happens, you can follow them on Twitter. Download the First Coast News app, because we're uploading this information as soon as it comes in as well. And if you're watching right now on our digital channel, this is up as well. We'll be streaming everything for you live. For now, I'm Keitha Nelson. We're going to go ahead and turn things over to the stream for you of what's going on inside the courtroom there in Glynn County.